sexist, racist and abusive. That's the tone of hundreds of offensive messages posted on an internet chat site used by current and former Australian soldiers. The site and its confronting contents, uncovered by 7:30, suggest a campaign by the top brass to clean up the culture of the Australian military has a long way to go. Last year it was the Skype sex scandal. Before that, sexual misconduct by sailors. Now, a private Facebook group of more than 1,000 former and serving Defence Force members provides another disturbing insight into the soldiers' world. This report from Hayden Cooper.
Over 6 decades of war and peace, the Royal Australian Regiment has built a proud history. It's a professional fighting force, 7 battalions of soldiers, the backbone of the nation's army. But the culture in the RAR is at times misogynistic, racist and homophobic.
At the core of our identity is a strong combat culture. We must preserve this because it's vital to our success, but we also need to concede that this culture has tended to exclude women and some ethnic groups who are underrepresented in our ranks.
In the online world, Australian soldiers stick together. This is a closed Facebook group. Gatekeepers ensure only current or former RAR soldiers are let in. The content shows why. This is a world in which Muslims are ragheads who should be shot. Australia is no place for immigrants. And all women, as the post says, are filthy, lying whores.
There's an element of a gentleman's club to the closed group, except they're not acting very gentlemanly.
There are more than 1,000 current or former soldiers in this group. The site is extremely busy and acts as an online meeting place. 7:30's been given access by one concerned member who wants to remain anonymous.
They seem to be doing a one-upmanship here, where one puts in a negative comment and then the next person comes in and has to say something even worse. So it's...
LAUREL PAPWORTH has advised Defence Forces overseas on social media strategy.
It's actually pretty gutless of them, because they would not be putting up those kind of jokes if their mum could see it, and their sister and their wives and their boss and their mate and aunt. So they know that they're not doing the right thing, and they're joining a closed group so they can misbehave.
Putting aside the pornography and racist material, the comments by the group's members are perhaps more telling.
Your role in the Defence Force will be determined on your ability, not on the basis of your sex.
When the Minister announced last year that more women would go into combat, the Facebook group went into overdrive as soldiers responded.
Well, if you had a nice, soft, warm pit buddy in the shape of a woman, you could have got rid of all that stress. LOL.
Fodder for the enemy. New break contact drill. Leave female soldier behind wearing bikini. LOL.
Don't worry about what the enemy will do to them. After a few weeks in the bush, most blokes would a black snake with a festered ass.
You're right about that. If she's half good looking with big tits, give you something to keep you awake on PK duty. Just hope she's not a noisy or the enemy will know where you are.
Let's face it, the RAF get the best looking ones, the Navy gets second dibs, and the Army as usual get what's left.
Vote 1, ugly chicks in every digger's gun pit.
If you're on ops and get rubbish, who carries the tampon and sanitary napkins bag?
So is this a surprise to members who have experienced Defence Force life?
I've heard it before, and if I was shocked, it's pretty commonplace.
NAOMI Brooks spent a year at the Defence Force Academy before deciding it wasn't the place for her. The trigger for leaving was the way a friend was treated by her peers after being raped.
And they would say things, I think one of the ones that really made me angry was about a week after it had happened, and someone in my div said, she should just get over it already, and calling her words that I don't like to repeat.
And then, when the Skype sex scandal was revealed, similar attacks took place on various social media sites.
they would say things like, oh, she's such a slut, she deserved it, she was asking for it. That sort of mentality where the blame is really placed on the woman. Comments like the ones on the Facebook groups aren't all that unusual, and because they're not all that unusual, as time goes on, they seem less and less obscene, and so it feeds back into itself. And throughout the year that I was there, those sort of comments became more commonplace because it wasn't seen as unacceptable.
There is probably systemic ignoring of this kind of behaviour. Oh, it's guys will be guys, just ignore it as long as they get the job done. And I'm not sure that that's an appropriate response to this kind of bad behaviour online.
I'm very pleased to be here today.
Lieutenant General David Morrison has been the Army Chief for 8 months. He's pushing ahead with efforts to bring more women and more minorities into the services.
Will it cancel out and negate any unfortunate incidents in the future? Unlikely. Human nature is human nature, irrespective of whether it's lived in uniform or without.
In this case, the defence hierarchy was alerted to the Facebook group and its contents 8 months ago. A member of the group wrote to the Chief of Defence and the Department Secretary. He also took his concerns to the Minister's office more than once. It raises questions. Why has nothing changed, and what should be done? Catharine Lumby advised the NRL when it first set out to overcome abusive attitudes.
The Australian Defence Force has really, I think, just started the process of cultural change, and they've got Elizabeth Broderick, who's a terrific person to head that up. And I think that this shows that these attitudes are there are problems, and they're going to have to commit to really long-term change. And I think we shouldn't be caning them for that. I think we should be supporting them in that process.
We make a lot of demands on our military. On one level, we want them to be big, strong, rugged men that can go in and be adversarial with an enemy. And on the other hand, they have to be big, soft gentlemen that don't ever say the wrong thing. And I think that that's a very teenage girl approach to bad boys. It's unrealistic.
The online group does serve a decent purpose, like fundraising for serving soldiers, and the administrators have warned members repeatedly to avoid overtly racist or sexist material. Finding the right balance, though, seems difficult both for the soldiers involved and for the entire military.
Everyone still has a right to their private lives, and if that's how they choose to conduct themselves in their private lives, it's difficult for Defence to intervene in social media. But I think in terms of the attitudes that they have and their own sense of dignity, one should hope that Defence would have the capacity to engage in training and to make it clear that there are standards of behaviour for members in Defence, and hopefully that should have run-on effects for mediums like Twitter and Facebook.
NAOMI Brooks is embarking on a new life after her previous career fell short of expectations. But she hopes that for others the experience can be better, despite these very clear signs that true cultural change is elusive.
It's come to the point where it needs external pressure from greater Australian society in order to make that change, because if Defence is left to deal with it again, I don't believe that the necessary cultural shift will happen.